let's go ahead and get started here. So first off, I do want to introduce myself. I am Nicole Juniman, one of the solutions consultants here at PSG. So my job as a solutions consultant, I do trainings with instructors. So whether that's a Navigate training, a Navigate demonstration, or a best practices, or maybe you just needed a one-on-one to go over your grade book. That is my job basically. Um, what I'm here for is to support you in any way that I can with your Navigate needs. Now, if you're ever wondering, how do you set up an appointment with a solutions consultant? You'll want to contact your account manager. And if you don't know who your account manager is, it can easily be found on our website. So if you go to psglearning.com, that's psglearning.com, and click on About, and then contact us. And then there'll be a spot for account manager. Now, you'll go ahead and select your state. That way, you'll be associated with the correct account manager. This session is recording today, so you guys will all get that available to you once it is done here. Now, I do want to address questions. We'll go over a Q&A at the very end. So if you do have questions and you throw them in that chat or throw them in the Q&A, I'm not going to address them until the very end, but I do have a really great team behind me who can answer those questions as we go through, but I will not be answering them until the very end, just so you are aware. So now that you know who I am and how we can support you, let's talk about the goals for today's session. So basically the overview here, we want to focus on designing engaging, clear courses. If your course isn't set up with clear expectations, your students aren't going to know where to go or what to do. The goal is to support students and reduce your instructor workload. We'll use realistic instructional scenarios, and we'll talk through Navigate tools in context. Now, I do want to make a big emphasis on consistency and clarity for your students. So how I like to put it is you want to set up your Navigate course as if you're going to have a new teacher the next day. So you'll want either that new teacher to be able to pick up your course and understand it, and that also helps with your students. So if your students are able to easily follow your course, they're going to succeed in your course. Now, let's take a closer look here at some specific goals we're learning today. So we want you to understand when and why to use these Navigate tools, such as activities and resources. We're going to be going over best practices, such as pairing activities with resources and being consistent with your naming and structuring. We're also going to leverage in built-in features to save time. Course organization will directly impact your student success. Like I mentioned earlier, if your students are confused, then they're not going to do very well. So you'll want to make sure that everything is cohesive, it's named correctly, and in the proper chapter if your Navigate course is based off of chapters. Now, let's start with one of the more common tools. It's going to be assignments. So you can make your own assignments. So let's say you've got something in Navigate that, that's not in Navigate. That's something you have that's not in Navigate. You want to make that an assignment. You can go ahead and add that in. You just want to make sure that you make clear instructions to improve the submission quality. If students have good direction, they will have good quality submissions. Now, the availability and the settings for course setup, you want your due dates, your cutoff dates, and your submission window to be clearly stated. Now, if you really don't care when it's due, or they could finish it in the last day of class, you don't really have a preference, You don't have to set those up, but if you would like a little bit more structure to your course, you do have the option to set all of those permissions. Now, so for tool masteries, what's the grade to pass? Usually that's listed in your syllabus. So maybe that's, 70%, maybe that's an 80%. Letting that computer know what the grade to pass is also allows you to set up other restrictions, such as, they can't do this item until they get, a passing grade on this item. So now the computer knows what that passing grade is. Now, you also have the opportunity to give students multiple attempts, especially if you're doing like a quiz. You can have 4 or 5 attempts on a quiz. That way they're, mastering these items and not just you take a test once and you move on. So tests, maybe 1 attempt, quizzes, you could use that multiple attempt button as well. Now, placement does matter. Pairing assignments and learning resources. So you want to make sure you do pair your content correctly. So if you have an assignment for, let's say chapter 1, you want to keep that assignment within that chapter. You don't want to put it down in chapter 5 if it actually pertains to chapter 1, as well as those learning resources too. Now, just a key reminder here, resources deliver content and activities confirm learning. So keep that in mind when you're on the Navigate page. I'll show you in the demo, but there is a section for activities and a section for resources and a section for all of those. Now, another area to keep, consistency is going to be your attendance. Now, you don't have to track attendance. It is an option for you though. So this will support in-person, online, or hybrid formats. You can integrate it with the gradebook, so that way, as your students are checking off that they are there, it goes to the gradebook. You can also add an option for self-check-in. This allows the students to check in themselves, so they'll be able to mark their own names as present. Now, if you don't want them to do that, that's completely fine. That is your option to do. Now, to do that, you would just make sure to uncheck that spot in the settings, and then you'll check off the students' names for them every time they are in class. Now, you can also do passwords and also QR codes for the students as well. That's going to be in your settings when you're setting up. You can align attendance with course policies and goals if you'd like as well. Now, let's briefly talk about our chat. So for our chat function here, you can use this for, anything like office hours or review sessions, even a live Q&A if you'd like. It's basically going to be a chat function you set up, and then a little chat window will come up, kind of like, AOL back in the day, where you could just chit chat back and forth. Now, when setting this up, you'll want to be able to set it up in a time frame where you can actually monitor it. And also, set expected response times. So, if you're wanting to check your chat all the time, then you can do that. You'll just have to log into your Navigate and check that. But maybe you have office hours, and maybe those office hours are between a certain time frame. You'll want to set that up so that way those students can use that chat at that time. Next, we'll look at files and resources and how to organize them. So, where the content lives matters. Like I've been saying this entire time, you want to place your related material together. So any of the activities, any of those resources, and then you can use your files and your folders to kind of organize things a little bit within each chapter or section. Now, you want to place these files or folders near those related activities. You'll use folders to group related material. And you want to make sure that the descriptions are clear and also the names on them are clear as well. Like I said, you'll want to create your course as if someone else was going to be teaching the next day, and they will be able to pick that up right away because that's what your students will be experiencing. Now, regular cleanup reduces clutter in Navigate. So something really handy about Navigate is you can do a course copy from one cohort to the next. Now, after, a year or two of doing this, or maybe even a couple semesters of doing this, sometimes your Navigate can get a little messy. So I do recommend going through and making sure everything still makes sense, making sure, all of those folders still work, all those files still work, and the flow of your Navigate course is still cohesive. Now, discussion tools are another way to drive engagement. So I'll go ahead and go into our forums here. So for forums, basically you can choose the type and basically set intentional goals. Preparation requirements, grading criteria, and also deadlines for these forums. You want to make sure you're present within these forums just to make sure that the material is meaningful for those students. So let's go ahead and take a look at the helpful content here. So we've got pages, text, and media. So pages combine text, images, videos, and links. And then your text and media areas will work well for brief instructions, reminders, as well as transitions between, maybe chapter 1 and chapter 2, just a brief description of what they'll be expecting. Now, clear formatting improves accessibility as well as intentional links for the students to keep them on track. Now, you'll want to make sure if you are adding those links in that they pertain to the information the students are working with. You don't want to accidentally link something that you didn't intend to for that chapter. So definitely go ahead and check your links before that week starts. That way you're making sure that all of your information will be valuable information for those students. Now, assessment tools also play a role, a very important role, I would say, in your Navigate course. So we've got the questionnaire, but we also have quizzes. So for questionnaires, you've got ungraded feedback, as well as student check-ins. So you could use questionnaire for either of those if you'd like to. Now, my personal favorite is going to be quizzes. That's how you create your tests, your quizzes, and your exams. Whether you use your own questions that you've created or the question bank that we've provided. Now, basically, these are going to be knowledge assessments. We all know what tests, quizzes, and exams are, and we can use these for learning reinforcement as well. Now, like I said earlier, you can adjust the timing, you can adjust the attempts if you like. There are quite a few settings in the quizzes tab to go through, and we'll go through those in the demo as well. It's got features like randomization as well as shuffle. So you can randomize your questions if you like. So let's say, you say, okay, I've got 5 questions. Now I want to give 5 questions to the students as we go through. Now it's going to give every single student a different question. So if you're looking for better data, I don't recommend using randomization. So if you're wanting data to say, okay, how many students are missing the same question? So that way we can go back through that question and figure out what's going on. Why are they all missing the same question? So in that sense, you won't want to use randomization, but we can also set up time limits for quizzes if we'd like as well, just to make the stakes a little bit higher for those. Now, for external resources, on our next slide here, we've got URLs. So these are going to be your web pages. So maybe, you found a really resourceful URL for your chapter 1. That's going to be a website. Maybe you even want to, upload a YouTube video. So you'll link that YouTube video into your chapter. you can choose to embed it or open it in a new window if you'd like. Now, I would recommend regularly reviewing these links for accuracy and access because, at any point, a website could be turned off and all of a sudden your link doesn't work. So that's one of those things you kind of just check periodically just to make sure they're functioning correctly. Now, Navigate can enforce course structure. So basically, Navigate set up with its different chapters as you go through, depending on which package you have, of course. And this structure can really help you and the students flow through your Navigate. Now, before we jump into our demo, let's recap a little bit here on what we've covered. So some of the key takeaways. We need clear, consistent course design to improve student success. Navigate tools work best as an integrated system, and built-in features reduce manual workload for the instructors. Incremental improvements are sustainable over the long term and will configure assignments to save time and reduce confusion for the students, the instructors, and any future instructors that could be starting. Now, let's put that all into action here, and I'll start the demonstration. So I do encourage you to take notes while you're going through, while I'm going through the demonstration, and we'll address any questions at the end. Now, let's go ahead and jump into that, and I will get us switched over here. Okay, so this is my Navigate account. I'll go ahead and launch my Premier Access here to EMT 13E and launch my course. Now, this probably looks familiar to most everyone on. This is my main Navigate page. I'm going to enable my edit mode here. Now, I did make a section earlier today myself, but I'm going to make a new section so we can start fresh here. I'll go ahead and add a section. Now, you can add sections wherever you'd like. They don't necessarily have to be here at the top. There is an add section button between each section in Navigate. I'm going to go ahead and rename this section to Demo and push Enter. Now I've got my section created. We do have the Add Activity or Resource button here within the section, but I do want to point out that within a section, there's a plus sign that says Add Activity or Resource. You can add them wherever you'd like. It doesn't have to be just here on this bubble. As you can see, there's one down here. It doesn't have to be this button. We do have them throughout the course. Now I'll go back to my section I'm working with, push the Add Activity or Resource button. You do have the option to star certain items. So I went through, it usually defaults on this all page here, but I went through and I clicked on these stars throughout. So that way I had my quick action items basically. Now, these are a listing of all of the activities and all of the resources. Then we also have it broken up into just the activities and just the resources. Now, I'll go ahead and go through here. We do have that URL. We can add in those websites. That's going to be your YouTube videos, your web links, anything like that. So I do want to briefly explain. I'm going to go over all of these bubbles, and then I'm going to create a few of them. We unfortunately don't have time to create one of each, but I will create just a few here. So the URL, you're going to add in, websites, YouTube videos, anything like that. You've got your text and media. So these are going to be, if you want to add any text, you're welcome to do that, as well as any media. The media does need to be a certain file size, so I would keep that in mind. Maybe if you have an image you would like to share with your students, uploading that as a file. So you can upload Word documents. You can download the slideshows we provide and upload maybe your own local material to those slideshows and upload those back into Navigate as a file. We also have folders and pages as well to help organize your material a little bit. So under activities, You can add in your own assignments. So that's going to be if you create an assignment in Navigate, such as, share a picture of an ambulance, that kind of thing. You can create that assignment and make it so the students have to submit that picture in the assignment. The attendance. Like I said in the PowerPoint, you can set this up so that the students are tracking their own attendance or that you're tracking the attendance for them. Now, you don't have to add it at all. It's just an option for you to do. We have chats and forums to engage students online. Then we also have this questionnaire right here. So you can create a questionnaire. Maybe you want to see, if your students are liking a certain teaching style you're working on, you could create a questionnaire for that if you wanted to. You also have the option to create a quiz. Now, this is, in my opinion, the most important button on this page. That's how you're going to create your tests, your quizzes, and your exams. So with it being the most important, I'm going to start with that one. I'll go ahead and click on quiz. Now we're going to make a quiz and call it a demo test quiz exam. We call them all the same. Test, quiz, exam. It's all going to be created under that quiz button. Now, you can add a description if you'd like, but you don't necessarily have to. If you do create a description, you can choose whether you want it displayed on the course page by toggling that on and off. And also, as you go through your Navigate course, you will see these little question marks throughout. You can just click on those to see what they say. And if you want to close them, you just click on them and click away. Now, there are quite a few settings here for setting up a quiz. If you're just doing a basic quiz, you really only need to worry about 3 of them. So that's going to be your timing, your grade, and your review options. So for timing, when do you want that quiz to open and when do you want it to close? If you don't enable anything, they could do all of their tests, quizzes, and exams on day 1 or all of them on the last day of class. So if that's not something you want, you can even just enable an open time. So let's say it opens today, but you don't really care when they finish it by, just, hopefully they finish it by the very last day of class. Or you could get a little bit more strict about it and say, they need to have it finished in 24 hours. So now I've got my open and close dates. Now, for that time limit, how much time do you want them to spend within that quiz? So we can go ahead and enable that. If you don't enable anything, they could be in it from the start, the open date to the close date. But let's say we do want to enable a time. So we'll say they have 10 minutes. And you can even change it to seconds, hours, days, or weeks as well. Now, our next one here is going to be grade. So if you do have maybe a weighted gradebook set up in your gradebook, you'll be able to select different categories here. So I do have a weighted gradebook system in place. So I can say, okay, we're going to call this a quiz, and that's going to report to that section of the gradebook that I already previously set up. And the grade to pass. Usually that's listed in your syllabus. So maybe that's a 70% or maybe it's an 80%. This basically just tells the computer what the passing grade is. So if you ever do set up any, restrictions down here, they have to complete one thing with a passing grade in order to move on to this next thing, then this lets the computer know what that passing grade is. Now, for the attempts allowed, right now it is set up to unlimited. They can take as many 10-minute quizzes as they want within this time frame. But maybe we only want them to take 3. And then out of those 3 attempts for grading method, which one goes to the gradebook? Is it the highest grade, the average grade, the very first attempt, or the very last attempt? Now, it's whatever your teaching preference is, but most common is going to be highest grade. Now, for that grade, or I'm not grade, for the review options, this is going to be what you see during the attempt, or what the students see rather, during the attempt, immediately after the attempt, later while the quiz is still open, and after the quiz is closed. Now, do you want your students to see the right answer immediately after the attempt? If you don't, you can go ahead and just toggle that off so they cannot see. You can also just toggle off the attempt so they can't see the attempt as well. Now, like I said earlier, these little question marks, they can be really helpful throughout as you're going through your Navigate course. If you're ever confused about immediately after the attempt, what does that even mean? You can go ahead and click these question marks and it's going to let you know it's the first 2 minutes after they push submit all. Now, like I said, these little question marks are a little tricky to close. If I click away, it's not going to close. You do have to click on the question mark and click away. It can be a little bit frustrating at first because you can actually open up a few here. So I do recommend only opening one at a time because they get a little bit hard to see. So click on it and click away. Now, I believe they did this so that it's easier to read this portion of the text. Instead of having to hover over this tiny little button and then try to highlight text like this, you wouldn't be able to do that. So much easier to just click and click away to get that to go away there. Now, that is the setup for a basic test, quiz, or exam. If you wanted to get into these other settings, you could do that. So we've got, appearance, how many images do you want to show? We have, restrictions here. Is a password required? Do you want to set up a password for that day? If you do set up a password, in order to go back and take a look at your password, you just click on this little eyeball here, and that will reveal the password for you. So that way you can share it with your students that day. Now we've got overall feedback. This is where you can add feedback for your students. So whether that's letting them know they did a great job for getting 100%, or maybe you set up a boundary. So let's say, they got, let's say that boundary is maybe 70%. You can say something like, come see me, or needs work, that kind of thing. Or check out chapter 1 and read your textbook. Now, we do have some common module settings here, but for this one, the only one you really need to look at is going to be that availability. Do you want this hidden on your course page, or do you want it shown on course page? There are many ways to do things in Navigate. So you could either hide this quiz here, or you could hide it on your main course page. We can restrict access. So let's say, maybe it's a specific grade. So they have to, for this specific assignment, let's say it's chapter 1 assignment, it must be greater than or equal to 70% in order for them to access this specific item here. Now I'll go ahead and delete that, and we'll also go over some completion conditions. So for those, do you want the students to manually mark their activities as done, or we can add in some extra requirements here. You can also leave that as none, and if they complete the assignment, it's going to show up in your gradebook still as well. For the tag section here, if you want to link this to a specific chapter, you can go ahead and do that as well. So maybe this is specifically for chapter 1, you can add that in there. Now, I'm not going to select any tags for that one, and I'm going to move on to adding in some questions. So for this, we can save and return to course, which will take us back to our main course page, which isn't a problem. We just have to click back into our course to add those questions in. Then we can go ahead and save and display, and that takes us right to where we can add some questions in. Now I'll push continue here. Now, there is an add questions on the left side here, but as we can see, we have no questions yet. This is our empty shell of a quiz. I'll push add questions, and then there's another add button over here to the left side, or the right side, sorry. For adding those questions, we can add in 3 different kinds of questions. You can add in a new question. So that's going to be a question that you've created with your own knowledge. So whether that's, drag and drop, essay, matching, true, false, short answer, you're welcome to create any question you'd like. You don't have to, though. We do have a question from Question Bank here. So if I click on question from Question Bank, and this is basically a filter. So we've got our apply filters button over here on that right side, And then we can go ahead and click this drop down where it says type or select. So if I wanted to select chapter 1, I could. These are my chapter 1 quiz questions. I have 20 in there as indicated by that number. I can scroll down a little bit. We also have the test bank questions. So I've got chapter 1 test bank questions. In this one, there's going to be 19 for chapter 1, but they do vary a little bit, such as chapter 6 has 101 questions in there for that test bank. Now, just because there are, 101 or 119 questions doesn't mean you have to use all of them. That is just an option for you. You can sift through those questions and see which ones you would like to add in. Now, if I keep scrolling down, we do have these clinical judgment scenario questions, which those are actually pre-made in our Premier package here. So that is ready to go already in the chapters. But if we wanted access to those questions, they are here as well. And that same thing applies for those assessment and actions down here. Those are also available in the chapters and ready to go already, but I have access to them. And that is all those questions. So I'll scroll back to the top. I'll click on my chapter 1 quiz questions and apply filters. So now that I'm looking at my 20 questions here, we have the option to preview the question if we'd like. So we can preview the questions, and this will give you a similar view as to what the students see as well. We have these little tags here that let you know a little bit of information about these questions. So where the complexity, is it an easy question? Is it a more moderate question? Since this is chapter 1, it does have a lot more easy questions, but we do have a moderate question thrown in there. It also lets you know where it came from, which chapter. So chapter 1, that kind of thing. So as we go through here, we can see on the left side, we have the option to select individual questions that we want to add in. We also have the option to select all the questions on this page. Now, if you want to add in the questions, you just push add selected questions to quiz. If you wanted to add just an individual question, you click on this plus sign right here that adds a single question in and does an action of selecting the question and pushing this button down here all at the same time. So this page will close and you'll be back on the page behind. So something that is a little bit different with the EMT 13E, which is what we're in right now, it has the question type listed right here. And we're going to have different question types, not just multiple choice. Now, this chapter I selected does just have multiple choice in it. But if I selected a different chapter that had different question types, it would let you know right in here. So that way you could make sure to select those question types. And that's going to help students with that NREMT so that they're getting exposure to those different question types and not just given multiple choice their entire learning career. And then all of a sudden they take that NREMT and they're thrown off. So I'm going to add a couple questions from right here. Go down to the bottom, add selected questions to quiz. So this quiz is ready to go. It's reporting to the gradebook. I don't have to do anything else. But if I wanted to, I could add more questions in. So let's say I wanted to add questions in from a different chapter. So I can go in and push from question bank and select a different chapter. So maybe I want chapter 2 this time, and I'll apply filters. So I've got my chapter 2 questions set up here. Then I'll go ahead and select a couple questions from that and push add selected questions to quiz. Now I've got my questions added in there. If you want to add, even more chapters, you could. The more questions you add, maybe that's, for your exams, you'll just add in more questions. Now you have the option to shuffle. So you can push shuffle, and that's going to shuffle between attempts for the students. So if you wanted to, let's say, have them take this the first time, and then for that second attempt, that's going to shuffle the order of the questions. So they're not memorizing these questions. Now, our quiz is set up, so it is ready to go. So I am going to hop back over to our main course page and go back to our demo section. I'm actually going to just hop to demo and not the main course page. But as you can see, we do have this nice little crumb trail here. And we can go back to that section we made, which is called demo. And we can go ahead and create some more activities here. So I'm going to go ahead and push add activity or resource. And like I mentioned earlier, we can either click this little plus sign here at the top or this bar here at the bottom. I'll click the bar at the bottom. These are my starred items I have, and I'm going to go ahead and click attendance. So to set up attendance, you can name it whatever you'd like. You do have that option, as well as add in a description if you'd like. If you do add in a description, I can't type in talk at the same time, apparently. Okay, so you add in your description. You can choose to display this description on your main course page if you select this button here. So I'll go ahead and select that. Now, for our attendance, we can add the grade if we'd like to. We can make sure this goes to a specific category in the gradebook if we want to. I don't have an attendance category set up, so I'm going to keep mine as uncategorized. Now, you don't have to have a grade for your attendance. That is just an option for you. If you'd like to restrict access, you can, but with this being attendance, I don't think you really need to restrict access, as well as, completion conditions. Do you want the students to mark it as done manually, or do you want to keep it as none? That way, there is no completion condition. The student just marks whether they were there or not there. And then you can also set up for the common module settings here. We do have the option to hide or show within that course page. Now, you do have the hide or show option on your main course page as well, under the 3 dots for that activity or resource. So we also have, tags here. If you want to associate this with a specific chapter, you are more than welcome to do that. I'm not going to associate mine with a chapter. And then for extra restrictions, this would be if you had a network address that you could enter in here. Now, you could save and return to course, or save and display so that you can now add those individual items that you need for your attendance. I will save and display. And continue. So now we can add in some sessions. We have our empty shell of attendance created. So we can go ahead and add those. I'll push add session. Now, this can be a little bit tricky because you do need your date here to align with the date in your course settings. So earlier, my course was set up to not start until 2030, and I was running into the issue of it not working because I had this set to 2026. So you'll have to keep that in mind when you are working on this. So I'm going to set this for today, and we're going to have multiple sessions. So we're going to repeat the session. Let's say our class meets Monday, Wednesday, Friday. If we want to repeat this every 1 week, so it's going to repeat weekly until we're done with class. So let's say class is over in July. So July 22nd. Now, do we want students to be able to mark their own attendance? If we do, we just check that. And then you can set up, when does it open? When can they start marking? Do you want them to mark 5 minutes before class starts, that kind of thing? Or, is there a password? You want a QR code? You can add those in as well. So if you wanted a password, you can click random password if you'd like to. I'm not going to set up a password for mine or the QR code. Now, if you'd like, you can allow students to update their own attendance as well. So let's say, maybe they missed a day or two and they went back in and updated their own attendance. They could do that if you had that selected here. Now go ahead and push add at the bottom. And this is going to auto-populate all of those days for us. So now we can go in and we can see, we've got Wednesday, Friday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Monday, that kind of thing, all the way until our class ends. Now, something to make sure you know is that when you are clicked into an item, so I'm clicked into my attendance right now, your gold bar changes depending on what you're clicked into. So if I go back to settings here, that's going to be the settings for the attendance that I selected. So we'll go ahead and go back to save and display. And that's going to take us right back to where we were. Now, your students will be able to record their attendance, and you can also record the attendance as well just by clicking on that little triangle. And we've got, PLEA. And then if you need to know what those mean, that's going to be present, late, excused, and absent. So you can select for your student which one they were that day. And then if you need to make a remark about it, you can right over there. And then you can save and show next page once you're done making those. Now, that's pretty much attendance in a nutshell. So I'll go ahead and go back to that section I'm working with. And we'll click into our add activity or resource. So now we've got assignments up next. So for assignments here, you can name the assignment whatever you'd like. So maybe we want to name this, chapter one assignment. You can add a description if you'd like, and you can also toggle on and off whether you want that shown on the course page. You'll list your instructions right here of what you want the student to do. So let's say submit a picture. Now, you can also upload a file for this activity or this assignment as well. If they needed, maybe they needed a Word document that went along with this assignment, you can go ahead and add that in. Now, for the availability, when you want it to start, do you want the submissions to be available from the 22nd to the 29th, or do you want to change those dates? You can also enable a cutoff date. So that's going to be, the absolute last day this assignment will close. And we also have the remind the instructor when to grade it. So you do have to manually grade these items, unlike those quizzes that you make in the quiz button, those test quizzes and exams. So you might want to remind yourself when that needs to be graded. If you wanted a time limit for this specific item, you could go ahead and enable that, but I'm not going to enable one for right now. Now, for the submission type, is this a file? Is this text only? I'll go ahead and just select file because we are submitting a picture in the assignment. And, we've got those feedback types. Do you want comments? Do you want feedback files? How do you want to provide your feedback for these students? We also have some submission settings here. Do you want them to have multiple attempts? Do you want them to just submit one item, or do they have multiple attempts for submission? Now, if you have groups, you can do group settings, but I'm just going to keep it as one individual person right now. And we can set up some notifications as well. So you can notify about submissions, and you can notify about late submissions as well. So just toggle those on or off, depending if you want them or not. And we can notify student as well. As you can see, that is the only one that is selected default. If you'd like a grade for this, you can go ahead and change the maximum grade if you'd like. You can also make it report to a specific category in your gradebook if you have those set up. So I'll go ahead and just set this to homework. And my passing grade for this is going to be 70%. That just lets the computer know what that passing grade is. Now, as we go through here, we have the common module settings, which they look familiar from all the other common module settings. We can hide those pages if we want, so hide on course page. But like I said, you can do that as well on that main course page. We can restrict access, so they can't have access to this until they get a specific grade on something, or a specific date happens, or a specific activity is completed. And then the completion conditions. Students can manually mark activities as done or none. It really just depends on what you want for your course. If you leave it at none, it's not a problem. They just won't be able to manually mark that as done. And then those tags, that's going to be which chapter do you want that associated with. Now I'll go ahead and push save and display. And continue. So now my assignment is ready to go. It's set up. So all the students have to do is put in their submissions for it. Now we are almost to time. So I do have a couple more things to show you here. I'll go through one more item real quick, and then we'll go over to that Q&A. So files. Next up is files. This is how you add in your Word documents, your PDFs, maybe a slideshow. You can add those in. So I'll go ahead and call this let's see, we'll call it a demo file. You can add a description if you'd like to, and you can toggle that on to be displayed as well. Now, to select a file from a file that you have on your computer, you just push this little plus sign here to add that in. I'll go ahead and choose a file. And then let's see, we'll go ahead and just choose that one. So I've got my file selected. Now I'll go ahead and just push upload this file. I've got my PDF in there. And if I like, I can go through and we can check appearance. Is this going to be, automatic, embedded, enforced? And as we go through, there are these question marks to read what everything does as you're going through. Now we can, show the type if we want to, or show the size. That's going to be like the file size and the media type. So it's going to say PDF. And we can upload or modify, or not upload, but have a modification date. So that way, if we need that information, we can toggle that on and off if we want to. Now, common module settings. We can hide or show on course page. Now, like I said many times, you can also change that in those other places as well. It doesn't have to be done right here. Those restrict access. Do we want students to meet a specific date, a specific activity, or anything like that? We have the option to set up those restrictions. Completion conditions. Do we want them to be able to mark this activity? We don't have to, but it is an option for us. And those tags as well. As you can probably see, there is a trend happening here. These are going to be set up all in very similar ways. The settings are going to be all similar in that sense as well. So I'll go ahead and save and display. Now that's going to take me right to my link right there. So if I click this, that's going to be that PDF. Now if I go back to my section using that button right there, this is going to be what my file looks like. So that is my demo file. We've got our attendance, our demo quiz test exam, and that assignment as well that we created in there. So let's see, we're at 1:51. So I'll go ahead and jump over to our Q&A and we'll get started on our questions here. All right. First off, I want to thank you all for joining me today in this webinar. If you do have any questions, please go ahead and throw them in the chat. I am looking at my chat now, so I will be able to read your questions. There is also a Q&A option. So if you do have some Q&As in there, I will be able to see them. I'm getting those pulled up now. Okay, so how do we weight assignments and quizzes? So I have a weighted gradebook system set up in my gradebook. So my weights are automatically assigned in that sense. And I'll go ahead and I'll share my screen and I'll show you my gradebook a little bit. There we go. So I'll go back to my main course page here and go up to my grade once it loads in. It doesn't help that I have edit mode toggled on, so that's going to expand everything out, make it a little bit slower. So go ahead and pop to grades. So this is my gradebook. I go ahead and click on our grader report tab, drop down to gradebook setup. And in here, I have mine set up to a weighted means of grade, and I've assigned weights here. So this part is not set up yet, but if I scroll down to the very bottom here, I have the grade book I was working on. So my quizzes I've set to a 40% weight, my tests are a 50% weight, and my homework is going to be a 10% weight. So that way, these assignments that I put in here are going to be weighted correctly for a total of a 10% homework weight, if that makes sense. Does that kind of answer your question, Seth? Okay, perfect. All right, next question here. Let's see. Is there available syllabus template? So what do they have to offer here is going to be, it's not under activities or resources. Under the course, your main course page, it's going to be under your teaching tools. So this right here, sometimes it says general. Teaching tools in general is the same thing. I believe they have changed that in the 13E, as I do have my edit mode on and it says teaching tools. But keep that in mind. So basically what they have provided here is going to be did I miss it? So we have the instructor guide. That's going to basically lay out what you've been given, all of the items you've been given, about how long each of them take. And then within each chapter here, let me go to a chapter that came with Navigate. So for instance, chapter 1 here, we've got that lecture outline, those lecture slides, these two quizzes that were already made in there. Let's see. But basically the course is already laid out, and using that guide, you can create your own syllabus basically with the amount of times the slides take, and it's about an average amount of time, I would say. So if your class takes longer, you want to take that into account. Does that kind of answer your question, Brian? Hopefully, you're still here. Okay, so we'll go ahead and push answered live. And then how do you change the dates on a new course? So I assume you're talking about this, where like this is my course and I did change the dates. So I went to my settings here at the top when I'm on my main course page, because you do want to keep in mind whatever you're clicked on, that's going to change your top bar here. So since I'm on the main course page, that's going to be the settings for my main course. Now, to change your start date, you'll just go ahead and see that start date there. You'll just want to change it. So I changed mine earlier today from 2030 to 2026. So it aligned more with my attendance that I was creating today. And if you want to end course date, you can enable that too. And you can set that up just by enabling it and making sure you set up that end course date. Now, I'm not going to do that because I do have to use my Navigate to show instructors. So I'll go ahead and save and display at the bottom. All right, so thank you, Frank. Hopefully that answered your question. Perfect, Brian. Thank you for getting back to me. All right, I am now seeing some questions in the chat here. So let me go ahead and go over and share my screen. All right. I applied for the instructor review copy of a book, but I only received online access. I do not have the teaching tools or anything different. So I would recommend reaching out. This is for George, not George, Gregory. Gregory Bush. I do recommend reaching out to your account manager for that, seeing if they can provide you with the correct information and what you're looking for. And if you don't know your account manager, I definitely recommend going to our website, psglearning.com, so you can find that information. All right, let's see some more questions. Oh, it looks like Lisa answered. Perfect, Lisa. Thank you so much. If you've not met Lisa or any of my other team members, Ramon or Jeff, they're all really, really great people. So I highly recommend having a call with a solutions consultant. Let's see. Not just because we're great people, we're actually pretty good at our jobs too. So Frank Friend had a question. It says, in individ chat at once. I'm not really sure what you mean by that. So if you could restate your question, chapters, individual chapters at once. Oh, change chapter dates. So are you talking about changing the name here or going into your settings? Just realized I'm not sharing the right screen for this. Let me share the correct screen. So if you needed to change this name here, you click on that pencil and then push enter once you've typed in the name you want. Now, if you'd like to set up restrictions for this section itself, so I need to click the three dots for the assignment itself. So let's say we wanted this to have some settings restrictions, click the three dots, go to edit, and then we are in the settings already for this. We can change the, no, we can't change the dates for this one, but we can change some completion or some restriction of access here. So you can say this has to be done at a specific date, and you can do those with those readings as well, those chapters, just not with the section itself, just the items within it, if that makes sense. So, you know, this must be match the following from this date at this time. And then you just go ahead and go push save down there, save and display, and that's going to complete that item for you. Now I'll go ahead and just cancel that. Now, hopefully that answered your question, Frank. Setting them up to open at certain times without going into each chapter. So you would basically either do what I just said, but I have heard of some people doing like a bulk action of hiding things, and then you can hide each section as well. So whether you want to bulk action select all and then push that hide button right there. But that is an option for you as well. I do see that we are a little bit over time here. So let me wrap this up. Any questions that have not been answered will be answered via email, that kind of thing. Thank you, Ramon. I saw he shared that bulk activity settings in the chat as well. So I do want to let you know there is a survey that's going to come to you guys. I would appreciate it if you filled it out. Just let us know what you thought of this, if this was beneficial for you. We will have more of these, not the specific topic, but even if there's a topic that you want to do, let us know. And if you do this survey, there is a chance for you to enter to win a $50 gift card. So that survey is a great option for you there. And I thank you all for participating today. And like I said, those questions will get answered. And if you need to book with a solutions consultant, please feel free to contact your account manager and get those scheduled with us. I hope you all have a wonderful night. Thank you.